extremely thorough and extremely complete. The purpose of data-driven teachers is not only to collect data so that you yourself can benefit from the data, but also so that other teachers can benefit from the data that you have collected. By putting this calculator into my shopping cart, I will remember the correct procedures to follow when collecting data, and I will ensure that my data is used to make decisions for the purpose of improving learning, teaching in schools. The last item that I like to put in my shopping cart is this chemistry model kit. This chemistry kit represents the idea that a professional teacher clearly articulates what he or she perceives is his mission or her mission as a teacher. This chemistry kit specifically represents the science aspect of my own mission statement. As mentioned earlier, I'm going to be a high school science teacher. As a high school science teacher, my mission is to inspire my students to discover the true importance of science, as well as assist them in forming and striving towards their own life goals by serving as their encourager, mentor, and role model. My will to inspire my students to discover the true importance of science leads me to think of myself as serving as an agent of change. One of the major things that I think needs to be changed in education today is to have teachers not focus exclusively on teaching for the test. Although standardized tests are part of our curriculum, I, as a future teacher, want to focus on teaching the content of the standardized test through many different educational approaches and aspects. Instead of exclusively using written tests to test my students' knowledge, I plan to use a variety of assessment methods. In my science classes, I plan to assess my students through lab work, group projects, research papers, science portfolios, oral examinations, and written examinations. By branching out and assessing my students using these variety of methods, I hope to steer away from teaching for the test. I also think that some high school science classes, although interesting, are not quite geared to prepare students for college, but rather geared simply to teach the curriculum. From personal experience, my high school science classes did not prepare me for the lab work and types of tests that college-level science classes contain. As a future high school science teacher, I hope to make the transition from high school science to college science easier for my students. I also think that it is very important to have parental involvement when it comes to a child's education. My high school did not have a PTA, and parent-teacher conferences were only optional. As a future teacher, I hope to enforce parent-teacher conference requirements and actively support my school's PTA program. This class was only the second education class that I have ever taken. Although I am very new at education classes, I am beginning to transition from thinking and behaving as a student to thinking and behaving as a professional teacher. This course has allowed me to make the beginning steps of the transitioning process, but I know I have a long way to go. Maybe my full transition to a professional teacher will occur when I'm in my master's program. Maybe it won't occur until my first day of teaching in the classroom. Whenever the full transition does occur, I know that I will take what I have learned from this class and put it towards my professional career. So as I conclude this presentation, I look back at my 7 items that I have put in my shopping cart. By gathering these resources and understanding the meanings behind each of them, I am making great strides towards the event that I have been planning for many years. By using everything I have learned in this class, as well as what I learn in future classes, I hope to be as prepared as I can for my first year of teaching.
So you talked about in your presentation how you wanted to not teach towards the test. What kind of assessments would you use instead to see if your students were progressing the way you wanted them to?
I think for my class, since I'll be a high school class, there's a variety of different things that you can do with older students. So instead of doing just written tests like standardized tests recommend, I could do a lot of lab work, because in science you can use labs to get a hands-on experience for the students. I also plan to do portfolios or group projects with a variety of different things into the portfolio, different ways, and not just one assessment, for them to show that they've learned things. I'm thinking about planning on doing oral exams instead of some written exams to give students who can speak their thoughts better than they can write their thoughts a chance to get across what they know. And I also would obviously do written tests also, because there are some students who that's the best way that they learn. So I'm hoping by doing all of that, at least every student can have one chance, like one thing that they're really good at, and know that they can get evaluated by using that.
That's good. You also talked about how your high school science classes didn't prepare you for college. What ways do you think you'll change your science classes in order to prepare your future students more for college science classes?
My high school classes were really interesting, and I did learn a lot from them, but I think just the way the class was set up was kind of a shock when I got to Ohio State. It was so different than what I was used to. The major thing that I noticed was the labs. When at Ohio State, you have to get everything yourself. You have to know where all the equipment is. You have to write out your lab, even if it's printed up, you have to rewrite it into your own hand notes and use that. And in high school, everything was just laid out for you, and it was a printed worksheet for your lab, and so it was all just very easy access. And I think for mine, I wouldn't make it quite as hard as obviously Ohio State is, but I would challenge them a little more than what my teachers did for me. And I think also just the way some of the tests are set up, the wording of the test is not so you look through the book and you see a definition and then that's in high school, that's your question. But in college, it's more analyzing data and things like that for science. So I think that's what I do.
That's good. Yeah. And you also talked about your parent involvement is really important to you. And you talked about how your school you went to didn't have a PTA. What if you're placed in a school that doesn't have a PTA? How will you get your parents more involved?
If I'm placed in a school that doesn't have a PTA, I think I would focus more on parent-teacher conferences than anything, because I think in my high school those were optional, and it always seemed like the parents of the students who didn't need to be coming in were coming in, and the parents who needed to be meeting most were the ones who weren't coming in. So I think I would make use of, like this day and age, make use of email and phone to get a hold of those parents and let them know if I think there should be a parent-teacher conference, and not be too pushy, but definitely let them know that I'd like to meet with them and I think I could change the way their child learns if they do. So I think that's the direction I'd go.
Very cool.